Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Retro Hardware. Today we're going to talk about the Vectrex system from Milton Bradley. The Vectrex system had its origins in 1981 when two guys, Mike Purvis and John Ross, were trying to figure out how to use a bunch of CRT screens that their parent company, Smith Engineering/Western Technologies, had recently acquired from a surplus store in Los Angeles. CRT stands for cathode ray tubes, and these are the tubes you find in the older, bulkier computer monitors and television monitors. Smith Engineering/Western Technologies was a video game company started by engineer Jay Smith, who had previously worked for Mattel. In 1979, Jay Smith actually created the Microvision, which was the first handheld games console which had interchangeable cartridges. So take that, Nintendo Game Boy. Smith was also head of engineering at Western Technologies, and after hearing the pitch from Purvis and Ross, he signed off on it and personally headed it himself. The project actually went through several names: the Mini Arcade, the HP 3000, and the Vectrex. For a brief period of time, in 1981, toy company Kenner, who had made the Star Wars toys, was interested in producing the Mini Arcade, which would have a 5-inch CRT screen. However, by July of 1981, Kenner was no longer interested. But never fear, a company named General Consumer Electronics stepped in, licensed the technology, increased the screen size to 9 inches, and finally settled on a name. It was going to be called the Vectrex. Walter Nakano and Colin Valls were the two men responsible for the look of the Vectrex system. Now keep in mind the Vectrex system came out a few years before the Apple Macintosh. So here's a comparison shot of a Vectrex system next to a Mac SE. The Vectrex system was unveiled in the summer of 1982 at CES. It was available for purchase the following fall. The launch price was $199. It had a built-in game called Mindstorm. Initial sales were strong enough to attract the interest of Milton Bradley, which bought out General Consumer Electronics. Let's talk about vector graphics. Most game displays use what's called a raster display, where the electron gun that displays pictures on the screen scans down the screen horizontally anywhere from 30 to 60 times a second, drawing small blocks called pixels. Vector graphics have the gun draw to exact locations only using the X and Y coordinates. Because of this, they require special electronics for this type of display mechanism. The advantage of this is that the lines and details drawn are much cleaner and crisper than their raster counterpart. This provides for great wireframe 3D effects. The downside is that color graphics become a bit more complicated, and solid graphics, non-wireframe, are next to impossible. Vector graphics were used in arcade games like Atari's Asteroids and the original Tempest. So let's take a look at the Vectrex system. It's not really a portable system, but it is self-contained. It has its own monitor and its own controller. The 9-inch monitor for the Vectrex, unfortunately, is only in black and white. But the Vectrex would simulate color by these color transparent overlays which would be included with the games. Here's the controller, which neatly snaps into the bottom of the system. Over here is the cartridge slot, and here you have a port for the Vectrex's optional accessories. Not only could you plug in a second controller, but the Vectrex had two very cool accessories: the light pen and 3D imager. With the light pen, you could draw images on the Vectrex's screen. There was a music cartridge in which you could draw notes and have those notes played. And lastly, there was an animation cartridge. The 3D glasses on the Vectrex system enabled 3D on certain games, and the Vectrex was very pioneering. In fact, these glasses came out several years before the Sega Master System's 3D glasses. All in all, about 29 games were released for the Vectrex system. Here are some of the highlights. Unfortunately, despite strong initial sales, the Vectrex was one of the victims of the 1983 video game crash. Milton Bradley began discounting the system, first to $150, then to $100, finally canceling the system in February of 1984. However, all was not lost. Jay Smith got the rights back to the Vectrex, and he's been a huge proponent of promoting the Vectrex on a not-for-profit basis. Also, Sean Kelly released a multi-cart with almost all the Vectrex library on one cartridge. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting.